you today. And we are back here with Just Talking Business. I am Stephanie Van Bark, and I'm a small business owner. And I thank you for joining us again. So today's show, I'll be talking to Natalie Bruner from Glad Ed Leadership Solutions. And I'm going to confirm that's right, actually, or it shouldn't be Glad ED. She is an entrepreneur who is teaching us how to be leaders in what we do. And so I really want to get to the nitty gritty of how she's been able to pivot and maneuver through this trying time we have here in the small business ecosystem. So welcome. Hi, Natalie. I call you Natalie, so I'm so glad. I was going to ask you, can I call you Natalie?
It's okay. In Miami, I'm used to it. So
you would respect people calling by their real name, but
and I want to say kudos for getting it right. It's Glad Ed, and you got it. Like so many people fumble on it, but you got it.
I try it. So I have a question for you. Is it Glad ED or Glad Ed?
So it's Glad Ed.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure I got that right. We'll start with who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So I'm the CEO and principal strategist of Glad Ed Leadership Solutions. And what we do is corporate training. We do leadership coaching as well as consulting around leadership, diversity, and employee engagement. And so we have a lot going on in a lot of different spaces.
This should be a really good time for you, actually, as we think about how the shift of coming out of the pandemic. And that's why I'm very intrigued with what you do. But I know you a little bit. You and I have actually had a bit of a relationship. I met you when you were a program manager at a major nonprofit. And there was a pivot from that to becoming your own business owner. So first I want to know, how is that going? And then, let's delve into some of the lessons you've learned since you've been out here in the stratosphere.
No problem. So it's going great. There are definitely opportunities coming my way that I haven't even had to look for. And it's just sort of growing on a daily basis. Once people figure out sort of what I do and how I do it through multiple ways, they just start coming to me and ask me questions. I just have no problem sharing with them. And so, I started out at a nonprofit as their program director and then worked my way up to a division director overseeing multiple departments. Within that work, I started working with entrepreneurs, right? And started learning about how to become one. I'm teaching all these, all these programs and teaching people how to become one. I was like, let me sit down and learn this.
I can do this myself.
Yes. So I sat through one of our own classes and was able to get sort of that background knowledge of, okay, here's the basics of it. Here's how you get started. Here's how you sort of write your own business plan and look for funding, market yourself. And I said, okay, I can do this. And so I started off as a side hustle, right? Doing it in the evenings and on the weekends. And I kind of floundered a little bit. I didn't, my job was my job, and the side was a side. And so I wasn't giving it as much attention as it probably needed. And then, the pandemic hit, everything went crazy. And I kind of stopped and thought about, okay, what do I want to do? How do I move forward in life? And so kind of made some decisions, with family, with, the previous company, with all these things sort of aligning to say, okay, this is where I need to transition to the next phase of my life. And everybody was supportive. I mean, literally everybody, and was able to go ahead and get out there and get started. Yes, during the pandemic, getting my business up and on its feet. And I've been able to make comparable salary from what I was making before, with the potential to make a few more, because I have a few clients that are in the wings that once I close them, I'll be able to actually exceed what I was making. And so it's been, like I said, things have been going very well when it comes to my business.
Now, what's your target market? And did you already sort of have a audience of folks that you could tap into once you went out on your own?
Right. So a little bit of audience already sort of established because of the work that I used to do in the nonprofit world. But Really, my target is businesses, so medium sized businesses that want to focus on employee engagement. They usually have the funds in order to devote to that, towards the training, towards the coaching of individuals, to make sure that their employees stay, because we're in the middle of the great resignation and people like me are
Right.
like taking different paths.
Right. Because everybody's trying to start a business.
Yes. And so how do you sort of speak to where people are right now and sort of keep them engaged in the work that they're doing so that the organization can be productive and continue to prosper? And so that's my target audience. When I started off with the training in particular, it was for a lot of nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
As I started doing more work with nonprofits and sort of getting more recognition, putting out some thought leadership. So, I've done, articles, podcasts like this, other sort of speaking engagements, and sort of introducing myself to individuals as not just a nonprofit
Right.
director, but sort of, a thought leader, someone that can actually help them in some of the business pains that they have. People started sort of reaching out to me about, can you talk about this? Can you help me with this? And so I've been able to move more now into some more for-profit businesses. Got a pretty large one that I'm working with right now, just trying to get my name out there, letting them know, hey, here's what I know. Here's how I can help you with what I know.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how are you able to engage or train on keeping employees engaged? Because we talked about that. That's been a really big conversation right now.
Yeah.
So, what is it you think employees are looking for that makes them feel like they'd rather go out on their own than to stay with in some cases a Fortune 500 company that used to be the dream.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things. I think at the heart of it, it's just you got to have good leadership. Like if you have a good manager, boss, you don't mind staying with them and working with them because there's a relationship and a rapport that you build with that individual. And I think it's a lost art,
Mhm.
unfortunately, to some extent, where individuals aren't having that relationship that they used to have with their immediate supervisor,
Mhm.
that wants to keep them engaged, that understands who they are, understands what their goals in life are. And I think that's the biggest thing, that there's just a misunderstanding of what people want, where they are, what they need. And I think that relationship, if you can repair it, that will allow people to, at least supervisors and the organization, to understand what do employees want and need in order to stay where they are. Because if you know what they want and need and provide it to them, then they won't necessarily go somewhere else. But if you're sort of going back and forth of this is our hard line, what we're going to do, and not listen, then
Mhm.
that's where people start to exit. A big sort of thing back and forth is the whole in office, out of office thing. And I've talked to people, they're like, they make me go back, I'm going to quit. And I'm just like,
Right, right. And
and nobody's listening to that. Like, that's a
I was
pretty
going
big.
to ask you, do you think some of that has to do with some of the companies that just have these very hard line and some of the pressures? I remember working in corporate America, and there were these really unrealistic expectations that came from the top down, from a bunch of people who didn't understand what those of us on the bottom had to deal with to get to get to those mandates. Do you think that's one of the primary problems?
Yeah, so like I said, it's listening to people, taking the time to stop and ask them, what do you experience? How do you feel? What do you want? And then taking that information and then acting on it. There's one thing, there's a bunch of employee surveys, right? Companies do employee surveys. That's one of the easiest things to do, is send out a survey for people to fill out. But then what happens to that information? Is that information actually, one, analyzed, two, reported back to employees to say, here's what we heard from you.
Mhm.
Is this correct? And then three, we are going to do X, Y, and Z based off of what we heard.
Okay.
And will you work with us in putting this together and moving forward in this direction? And so I think there's a lack of sort of the co-creation, the working together of, like you sort of said, at the top and the front line of
Mhm.
exactly how do you move forward to implement a lot of things, because a lot of it is top down. And I understand that there is a perspective at the
Correct.
top.
Correct.
I've been there, I get it. There's a
Because you know you're doing
perspective.
it. stuff. You
certain
got
information that everybody's not privy to that sort of sheds light onto why decisions are made. But there needs to be some level of transparency and explanation to the people that are going to be implementing these actions, why we're going in this direction. And then saying, okay, maybe you can help us with the how. Like, we got to go in this direction. We can work together on the how. And so I think there's just trying to figure out where people's voice can fit into how the organization moves forward is what's lacking at this point.
Do you think the employees trust those surveys? I'm sorry, my employment days are coming back out. I remember we took this Gallup poll one time, and I hate to say it. I can say it now because I'm many years removed, but it was the biggest joke in the department. Nobody really wanted to hear that it sucked.
And so, there's a couple things. It's why, employees don't necessarily take it seriously. So one, what have you done in the past? Have you sort of just sent out surveys without anything coming from it? Two, do they feel psychologically safe to actually be honest on these surveys? Like, is there a culture of sharing, openness, sort of just an understanding that they can take the good and the bad, the criticism, no matter what comes their way? Is there that openness within the organization? And then I think the third one, because they're just sent out without an explanation as to why it's being sent out, what's going to happen from it, it becomes like, why are you sending this to me? Like, you need to understand that there has to be some buildup, some explanation, some working together so that there's a real communication about what this is, why is it happening. Then you do the survey, then you come back, analyze it, and share out and co-create a plan. And so it's a long step process that people pick one part out of and then wonder why it doesn't, why it's not successful.
So, okay, now let's go back to you, because it's funny. What's interesting, I think, about a business like yours is not only do you have to focus on the businesses that you serve, but in that also focus on your business as well, because you are a small business as well. And I'm a service industry, you're a service industry. So I'm intrigued when you're selling something like leadership and training, first, how do you sell that? What are the mechanisms by which you do that? What are the messages? Because it's not a widget. And then how have you been able, and you don't have to give me actual numbers, really been thoughtful about how to set your pricing?
So that second one, we're gonna have a real laugh about that one.
That might be an offline conversation, because I'm still working on that myself. That's why I'm asking you.
So I can really dive into the first one. So with the first question, as far as how do you get, basically how do you get customers? How do you get people to want to buy it from you? And in the service based sort of aspect of it, people have to trust that you know what you're doing when it comes to the service. There has to be a little bit of them liking you. And they have to know that they're going to get results from you. And so a lot of that is, with the trusting that you know what you're talking about. I do a lot of, I guess, knowledge marketing. I don't know if that's the actual term, where I'm putting out a lot of, here's what I know, here's the information, here's my perspective on it, here's how I view different theories, different organizational situations, here's how I would respond to it. I'd be on LinkedIn like all the time,
right?
Information out.
Just attest to that.
Because I want individuals to know, like, here is where I and my company stands when it comes to this topic. And so when you come to me, we probably already have some alignment because you've taken the time to stop and probably join the group, read what I've posted, and say, okay, I agree with this. And then, I present them with opportunities of us working together, coming out to listen to me around different topics. Constantly sort of reaching out to people saying, here's what I do, here's an opportunity to work with me, here's what I know. And then once we meet with them, clearly doing the research on who they are and what they need, where their industry sort of is right now and what I can do to help them within that industry. to get them to like me. And then, like I said, to trust that I can help them. A lot of it is like pulling a lot of testimonials from previous clients. And so
Right.
I have quotes, I have videos, I have different surveys that I've sent out of, whether or not I've done a good job, just so I can say, anchor like, hey, I have past clients that show that I've done good work, that that I'm going to do good work. And so you can then trust me because you know what I know, you know
Right.
what past people say I've done. Now all you just have to do is determine whether or not you like me in order to do this.
Are you a nonprofit or for profit?
For profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you find that structure was better for you when it came to working with nonprofits? Do you feel like there was a little bit different trust, or was it because of you and your knowledge of the nonprofit base?
So I didn't really felt it fit within the nonprofit world, only because of the structure I'm growing towards. And so I already kind of know like where I want to grow as far as the diversification of
Okay.
what we plan.
Okay.
And the nonprofit just did not fit the structure. Now I do have a separate nonprofit that focuses on economic development, but it's, like I said, a little bit different than what I'm actually doing.
Okay. Are you
Yeah.
in a very competitive space here? Are you
So in South Florida, it's not as competitive. I think
really?
nationwide, there are tons of leadership coaches and corporate trainers everywhere. But down here, it does not feel
Mhm.
as competitive as you would expect. And so, like I said, people have been very open, inviting, and want to listen to sort of what can I offer, how can I help you. And so it hasn't been as hard of a battle as it's been in other spaces that I've been in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was looking at your website and I saw you had a statement that was about success. And I wanted to know, what does success mean to you? Twofold. One, for your business, what are you basing your success metrics on? And for the businesses that you serve, when you're talking to them, what are you saying your successes should be?
Yeah. So I have I don't know, a STEM background. And so my my successes sort of metrics for success are usually almost always quantitative. Like
Okay.
I understand that there are the sort of qualitative sides to it, and yes, I want this to feel this way. But like at the end of the day, if I don't hit this number, then I'm not
I will not make that.
happy.
Will not be successful.
Yes. So there are other things that are included in that, but like at the nitty gritty, there is a baseline revenue that I have planned for this year to hit within my organization. For the people that I work with, I'm about like making sure reducing turnover rates. We're talking about improving employee engagement rates. Like I want to see that quantifiable movement within their organization. Yes, I want people to feel it, but I honestly feel that if you're hitting the qualitative side, it will be reflective in the quantitative side. So if you're helping people to feel better, feel more engaged, feel like they're more part of the organization, excited about it, then when it comes to us doing our surveys pre and post, when we're doing our outreach and actually putting a number to these things, we'll be able to see that and track it within the changes.
Okay. Wait, we got to go back to the pricing thing again.
I thought I had like right here. I was like, is she gonna remember that?
Look,
It was right here. I had thought it for a
I
second. I
am.
was like, I wasn't gonna push it.
Literally, some of these shows are really my teaching tools. But that's why I'm like, as a service organization, how did she come up? And just I'm again not dollars and cents, but how did you sit down and really structure this? Is because it took me a long time to get to where I am today, and I'm always questioning and challenging that number. How were you able to do the again without a widget? How do you? How do you?
So I took a lot of different ways to get to where I am, and it's probably still not the final mark. And
Mhm.
so what I initially started with was a sort of per hour rate, and then figuring out how much time would go into doing this, and then setting it based off of that. And then I sort of had someone sit down with me, was like, hey, you were undercharging for what you're doing. And I was like, but I did this calculation, back to the numbers. And like, no, you need to go back and really stop and look at it from multiple perspectives. So one, what industry are you working with? What are their available funds? What do they expect to pay? Because if I undercharge, and they'll see it as a lower quality value than it actually is. And so I have to be able to price myself into even competing with other organizations. And then really to stop and think about not just sort of the per hour, but the value of everything that they're getting from me, as well as the value of my background and my skills. So not just that I've worked, in organizations doing this kind of work, but I'm also, let me knock on wood, about to on the path to graduation with my doctorate in December.
Nice.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. In educational leadership. So it's not just me sort of saying I've done this, get work, get help from what I've done. Yes, it's that, but it's also my education, my knowledge, all sort of being pulled into sort of this moving together, and my capability to think through problems and be able to be creative. That's really sort of lending to it to understand what is the full value that somebody's getting from me working with them. And it's so funny. Sometimes I talk to some companies and I'm like, this is like the easiest thing ever. Why are they asking me to do this?
That's okay.
That's what it is. Like, you know what? They need you to do it because it's easy to you. Doesn't mean it's easy to them.
Correct.
And so
exactly.
I have to remember that sometimes, and I think that's why, we as women, people of color, sort of understand, because it feels easy to you because you're good at it. And so you assume that it's easy to other people, and so it's not as valuable as it truly is. But that's not the truth, okay? Just because it's easy to you does not mean it's easy.
And also like for especially with for-profit businesses, because I guess I've kind of dabbled in both a little bit. They're very much like for-profits in the sense that nonprofits say we follow models, for-profits follow what they did last year. So if you think about it, they literally have been, the company I used to work for had been around, 100 years, I think, by the time I got there. So there's 100 years just handed down with a little bit of shifts. So I can only imagine what many of them are going through right now because, it was a complete upheaval.
It really is. And so, that's a little bit about, so just throwing it out there. I did a TED Talk on a little bit about shifting the way we structure jobs to keep individuals engaged and involved in work. And so right now you put a job online, there's a list of duties and responsibilities, job descriptions. You hire a person to fill all these things. They get into the role, something happens, I don't know, COVID, they decide they want to take care of an aging parent, whatever happens in their life, and they can no longer do all the 10 to 20 things that were listed on the job description. And so what I was speaking a little bit about was being able to trade in some of those job descriptions and stay with the organization so that you can still handle these other aspects of your life. And so kind of switching them out like Lego pieces where, you sort of give back 5 or 6 of them. Someone else picks them up because they want to grow and learn and have stretch projects in their organization, just so it fits. But I mean, that takes some real out of the box thinking. And I think a lot of people, like you said, are used to doing it a certain way.
Right.
They've seen this way work, and so they lean on that comfort of experience, as opposed to saying, okay, let's step out, try something new, be a little innovative. I know it's a little scary, but you got to try something, or else doing the same thing will get you the same results.
Exactly. So, okay, I've got some good questions there. I know. Wait. So how did you recognize the need? You mentioned you sort of already sort of been dabbling in the market, hustling a little bit, and then decided to jump on your own. How did you recognize there is a need for someone to come in and, because we're in the same ecosystem. There's been a lot of focus on primarily startup small business. Very little focus in my mind of how to support businesses who need to keep their staff motivated. so they can keep their doors open. How did you recognize and pinpoint that's a need and that's what my niche is going to be?
So I started a very weird way, and I think I jumped off the cliff before deciding to jump off the cliff.
Switch this around.
Probably not the best way to do it. So there was an organization that actually put out an RFP to do training, right? And so I was like, okay, that's a topic I can do. Like I can easily put that together. I used to teach on the university level for a little bit. I said it's my background. And so I was like, okay, let me structure this company and put it together to apply for this RFP. And so I did it. They loved it, was able to get some more customers that way. And I was like, okay, let me see about this industry, this field, the growth potential. Like I said, I look at the numbers, like how much is in the market when it comes to actual funding and finances. What's the growth potential over the next 15, 20 years? And then I made that decision like, okay, this is where I can be, where if I built something here, the chances of it being able to be sustained is actually probable.
Okay. You are for now, a solo entrepreneur. I would imagine, which many of us are really. I know for me, I don't have employees right this moment. I used to, but now I'm contracting out services as needed. How do you manage your day as a solopreneur? Because you're right, I see you on LinkedIn all the time. It's like you're everywhere. Like, how does she get any work done?
You know what? That's what my old boss said. What are you doing? Like what? I swear I'm working. Yeah.
You got a family. What are you doing? Like, I can't get all that done. I'm sorry.
And I will say this, so for you and her, like that wasn't me. So I have contracted out somebody to handle my social media because it does take a lot of time and energy to be on there.
I'm glad you said that because we could just post it.
And so like I sat down with him and we came up with like a marketing plan and what needs to be posted and when, and like he has like certain things to do, and so he's not just posting random things. It was a plan that I had sort of built for him. But no, I can't sit and like post things all day and respond and like and all those things. And so that is his particular job. And I think that's what, as a solopreneur, you got to understand what of your activities best needs you. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. And so there's just some things that you're doing best. So as service-based people, we are the experts in providing the service. And mm-hmm. so, for me, the product development, the service delivery of the trainings, the actual coaching interactions, that's where I need to be right now, because that's where that's the work of the business, right? Right. So I serve my customers. That's how I get referrals, testimonials for new business. And so that's where my time and energy needs to be. Everything else needs to be like supported by someone, something else, an app, mm-hmm. something needs to support that. I depend on Calendly to set up meetings for me. Like I said, I have that social media manager. I have, an executive assistant that does outreach for me. And so there's like a lot of people around me. I go to Fiverr on a regular basis if I need support when it comes to developing something. Like I didn't have time to sit down and create a marketing plan, so I hired somebody to do that. Right. There's just certain things you don't have time for. Right. And it's okay to reach out and have someone else to do it. Like, it's okay.
Now talk about if a small business, we're dealing with a dollar or two. So how would you advise them to think through when it's important for you to invest in that way?
So I will say when free doesn't serve you anymore.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. And at some points free works. And so there's a lot of programs for small businesses. SCORE has a lot of people that are near retirement that are willing to sit down with you and give you advice on how to do things. There are resources out there. I have been through almost every small business incubator program that we have here in Florida, just about. I haven't hit them all just yet, but I've hit a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And so just pulling in that knowledge where you can from all the resources you can stopping and asking people, like, people want to help you. Like, just sit down and talk to people. For a long time, I kind of pulled back now because I don't have the time to do it. I used to just reach out to people on LinkedIn and say, hey, let's just sit, chat, talk, and see about, like, what do you do, what do I do, and just sort of share with each other. Got a lot of great ideas of what people are doing out there. A great way to understand the voice of your customer and sort of where they are, where their mindset is. Understanding how to make connections with other people. And so just, again, I know COVID sort of put a dent into the networking sphere that we used to have of where people were and what they did. But that does not mean that you should not make an effort to continue to reach out to people to make those resources or those connections to get to those resources that you need.
Right. So I know you are busy and I don't want to take up a lot more of your time, but just the last two questions would be, if you are talking to one of your clients, what would be sort of that last bit of advice that is critical as they move forward? And then, of course, we don't want to leave without finding out how we can find you.
Sure. So I think how to move forward, like after we've done like maybe consulting or training, like what the next steps would be. I would say to make a plan to move forward. I tell everybody, like, if you work with me, like, and with any trainer or consultant, and you start digging into these issues and having people think about, like, how is my organization engaged, understand that means you're making a commitment to sort of actually do something about it. Because nothing worse than asking something, what's wrong, and then walking away after they told you what's wrong.
Listen, and then
and so I would always say that, okay, we've started this journey. It's just the start of it. You're making a commitment to now move forward and to do something about it on a continual basis, to constantly reach out to your employees at least annually, to check in with them, to train your leaders and managers to have that check-ins with your employees one-on-one during your meetings, to not let this be an ending point because we've had a training. Yes, we've had a training, but it is a beginning to give you enough knowledge to start to do something in your organization. And I always tell people, like I'm telling you this to go back and do this, not like this is it and you're like home free for the rest of your life. Like, no, this is so you can take this information, figure out which one of these things you're going to actually implement, and then implement it within your organization. Yeah, and so that's definitely what I would tell the organizations that work with me after we've sort of concluded, is that this is only step one. Please continue the journey forward. People need you to. It impacts people's livelihoods, their souls. Nothing's better than coming home from a job where you feel like you've done something, you're engaged, and you're fulfilled. Yes, and rewarding, versus one that drains the life out of you and the impact it has on you. Exactly. You know that
that's what you're going to get in productivity. If you really think about it, I mean, if no one has the energy, they're not going to put it back into your business. So you definitely have to make sure you're keeping them energized and rebooted. So,
and I'm just talking about like the world. Like once you come back from being drained at work, like how are you with your kids, your partner? Do you want to go and volunteer? Like you're kind of like, I'm done with the world. No.
I don't want to see you anymore.
So exactly. So I want to make the world a little better place by making work a little better.
Good one. I had a coworker once that talked about how every Sunday she would get depressed when it was time for her to go back to work on Monday. And then she did a little research, and it turns out, I guess statistically at that time, I don't know if it's still the case, but most heart attacks happened on Sunday or Monday right before people were going to work. And I was like, I think it's time for you to get a new job. Clearly, there's some problems here that you're looking that up.
Yeah.
Oh, what? I get what you're saying. So, how can we find you?
Sure. So, like I said, I am always on LinkedIn. It pops up on my phone regularly. You can find me, Natalie Robinson Bruner, or you can find my organization, Glad Ed Leadership Solutions. There aren't really any other Glad Eds on there. So if you just type it in, it will pop up. Like I said, LinkedIn, we're on Facebook, IG, and Twitter, but LinkedIn is the main place that I sort of interact with individuals.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate you jumping in and letting us know not only what's going on with you, but some tips that we can carry forward as well. If anybody wants to reach out to Natalie, I'll tell you. She's a super dynamic woman, so I think you should try it. So thank you so much, and I will chat with you soon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an unbelievable pleasure.
Thank you so much. So, everyone, I want to say thank you for joining us today. Please join us again next week. We will have more and more dynamic CEOs who will teach us how to do this right. So, till next time.